On today's video, I'm going to cover with you how you can break 80. So if you've been in the 80s, struggling to break that 80 mark and get into the 70s, maybe become a single-digit handicapper, I'm going to give you 5 ways that you can do it on this video. Now, if this is your first time checking out the channel, make sure to hit subscribe, turn on that notification bell, and you'll be notified every time that we release a new video like this one on the channel. Without further ado, let's talk about my 5 tips to break 80. All right, my number 5 tip is to use a rangefinder. A rangefinder is going to give you pinpoint accurate distance that you cannot get from a smart watch, which is going to give you 2 or 3 yards of distance. And that's going to make a big difference if you're trying to break 80, because you're going to want to know exactly how far you can hit your clubs, especially when you get inside of 100. There's a big difference between 73-yard shot and a 54-yard shot. And you might not see that visually, especially if there's undulations in the course. You might not be able to tell the difference between 53 and 74 yards by eye, but this is going to give you that. And if you know exactly how far it is to hit a 54 and what type of swing you have to make to hit a 54-yard shot, this thing is going to be so invaluable to you. So that's tip number 5. All right, my next tip, if you want to become a single-digit handicapper, break 80s, is that you've got to get deadly from 100 yards and in. That is a critical distance that a lot of amateurs hate. They hate the 70, 80-yard shots, but if you want to go below 80, you've got to love those shots. My favorite distance these days is 70, 80 yards, to be honest with you, because I know I can pull out my 56-degree wedge. That's my club. Some people hit a 60, some people hit a 53, but I hit a 56-degree wedge. That's my club from 75, 80 yards. And I can get that thing within 10 to 15 feet almost every single time. All right, so that consistency from 100 yards in is so critical. So I want you to think of your swing from 100 yards in like a clock. I can hit this wedge anywhere from about 40 yards to 80 yards. And all that I changes is where I bring the club to. So if you think of it as a clock, like a clock at home, one of those old analog clocks, if I'm all the way up here, let's say 10 o'clock, that's going to be my 80-yard swing, right? If I only come to about 9 o'clock, that's going to be like my 70-yard swing. And if I only bring my hands to like 8 o'clock, we're talking 60 yards. And if I only bring my hands to like 7 o'clock, maybe 7:30, that's going to be like a 50-yard shot, okay? So right now I actually have 82 yards. I know I need to hit my 10 o'clock swing, and we'll see if we can knock this close. This is where it ended up. So if you practice those shots from about 50 to 100 yards and you get deadly within 100 yards, you're going to break 80. All right, tip number 3 is you have to get better with chipping. You've got to be a deadly chipper from around the greens. You've got to be able to put that ball within 3 feet of the cup 70, 80% of the time. So in the past, I've actually had trouble sort of picking my head up or coming out of the ball on my chips. But I read Tiger Woods' book about 5 years ago, How I Play Golf, and that changed the way I chipped. His main philosophy when it comes to a little chip shot like this is that you need to encourage a downward strike on the ball. It's when you pick yourself up, that's when you get into trouble. The other thing is you always have to make sure that your hands are ahead of the club face. The club face should always be trailing the hands. Okay, so it's when you break your wrists, that's when you skull it, that's when you shank it, and all kinds of bad things happen. So if you can remember those 2 things, to put more weight on your front foot to encourage a downward strike, you want to feel like your 60% of your weight is leaning on that front foot, maybe even 70%. So I put a little bit more weight on that foot, and I make sure that my hands are always ahead of the ball. Between those 2 tips, I got to be a much better chipper. And I could consistently strike the ball, and then it just became, distance, how much I had to take the club back. You don't want to take the club back. By the way, I see people, they take the club way back on a chip, and you don't want to do that. It's a very, very short motion. You don't want to go too far back. So this is a chip that a lot of people are scared of because you're short-sighted here. And if you don't really commit to the shot, meaning you hit it with that downward strike and really make sure that you swing through it, you're going to be in trouble. So getting better with your chips is a huge part of breaking 80, and I'll show you hopefully how you can knock it close. One last tip regarding chipping that became a game changer for me. I used to try to imagine a 3-foot circle around the cup, and I'm trying to get inside that 3-foot circle. But what happens is if you miss when you're trying to go for a 3-foot circle, you often leave yourself with a 5-foot putt or a 6-foot putt. These days, I actually think about trying to make every single chip. And because I'm narrowing my margin of error, I'm also generally narrowing my miss. So I want you to remember, the smaller the target, the smaller the miss. That will change your chipping for the better. So while we're talking about short game, my next tip is about putting. You've got to be able to make those 3 and 4 and 5 footers very, very consistently. The pros do that 98% of the time, but if you can even get to like 90, 95%, you're probably going to break 80 one of these days. I was asked actually by the Backyard Golfer, and if you don't know his channel, go check it out. I'm going to leave a link for you in the description. But he asked me, Gabe, you're a pretty good putter. What's your secret? And my secret is basically to limit all movement. I don't want any head movement. I don't want any body movement. Just my arms are moving, okay? Nothing else in my body is moving. And I'm trying to keep it just on that little pendulum. Listen, how you do that is different for everyone. Some people play the ball right in the middle of their feet. Some people play it up in their feet. Maybe some people play it back in their feet. But it's wherever that you can kind of just move your arms and get that pendulum going so that your stroke is consistent and you can put it on line every time. That's how you make those 3-foot, 4-foot, 5-foot putts. And I guess I'll tell you about my putting grip. My putting grip is like a reverse overlap. So normally my right pinky is going to be what I hit my golf shots with. But when I'm putting, I go to a reverse overlap. So my left index finger is actually on top of that right pinky. I choke up on the club just slightly and I play the ball up in front of center just a hair. That's just, again, for me, that seems to be where I can get that thing straight and on line every time. But that could be different for you, so that doesn't matter. But that's my grip, sort of a pretty basic grip. Again, I think that's Tiger Woods' grip from his book, How I Play Golf. The reverse overlap seemed to have worked for me. Of course, for you, it can be different. I mean, some people have claw. Some people use a big putter. It really doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is making sure that you hit consistent contact and making it all about your arms without your head or your body moving. Now, my last tip on how do you break 80 and shoot in the 70s is you've got to eliminate the double bogeys. And that's, of course, much easier said than done. But one of the key ingredients to not making double bogeys is to not make stupid mistakes. Now, we can use this shot as an example. I've got water on the right and a bunker protecting where that pin is. I've got a tree overhanging, so I've got to take a low shot. Now I could try to be a hero and go at that pin, or I could bail out left, try to hit maybe like a little 7-iron that I know I can draw around. And hey, maybe I make the green or maybe I'm just short, but hopefully my chipping will get me close enough to make par or worst case bogey. But if I try to be a hero and go for the stick, but I miss a little short or I miss a little right, I'm staring a double bogey right in the face. So getting smart and thinking about course management and maybe settling for a bogey every now and again or a really hard, tough par. If I could get this close and then chip it and make the putt, I can make a par. That's the type of thinking that's going to help you break 80 out on the course. So watch how I play this shot. I'm not going to be a hero. I'm going to take my 7-iron. I'm going to hit a low one into an area where I know I can't go too wrong. So I got a little chip of the putt. And that's how you break 80. Hope you enjoyed this video. Keep coming back to the channel. You can do that by hitting subscribe, putting on the bell notification so you know every time we drop one of these videos. So make sure to subscribe today. We'll catch you back on another edition of Let's Play Through.